we go ahead and get started. So hello, everybody. My name is Matthew Volm. I'm the CEO and co-founder of RevOps Co-op, a global community of, I think we've got 8,500 plus folks now, probably closer to 9,000 folks who are all passionate about revenue operations. Got a bunch of different membership options. So if you're not a member yet of RevOps Co-op, would obviously love to have you take a look at the website, revopscoop.com. And today we are running a panel discussion with a couple of RevOps pros, RevOps MVPs that are all about 3 essential RevOps practices to help you secure your status as the company MVP. And specifically, we're going to be talking about compensation expertise, building the perfect or the ideal tech stack, and then how you can tell a story with your data storytelling. So before we dive into those, though, I want to introduce the panel that we have today. First, we have Kamala Thompson, who is on the RevOps team at Caliber Mind. Whenever I introduce Kamala, I always say that she is a RevOps unicorn, if you will. I think she's held roles of VP of marketing. She's been in marketing ops, sales ops, RevOps. She can run a SQL query and like adjust website messaging and everything in between. So
sales engineering, onboarding, customer success. I've kind of done it all.
Yep. So Kamala brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. And so Kamala, thank you for being here. I guess one question for you, non-work related, non-professional related, give us like one fun, interesting fact, personal fact about yourself. So
I'm going to give you a couple. I'm a published fiction novelist, and you can find my books on Amazon. And then the dog that you may see hanging out like a cat on my couch is named Kevin.
That's awesome. I always love it when dogs have people names. Met one the other day, this like big old golden lab whose name was Dan. Yeah, so awesome. All right, well, Kamala, thank you for being here. And then we also have Ryan Milligan, who is the director of revenue operations at QuotaPath. Ryan, I hope I'm not stealing your fun personal fact. I know you're like a week into kind of being back on the job following some parental leave from the birth of your first child, I believe. But
yes.
So first off, congratulations on that, and
thank you very much.
Back and tell us what is give us one fun kind of interesting personal fact.
Yeah, I'll follow Camel's. I'll give you 2. Outside of work, I write crossword puzzles. So I've had 2 crosswords published in the New York Times. Is a big like side hobby of mine. And I won a Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo in a raffle when I was 10. That's the other really very funny story. I'm happy to tell you more about it. Sold it, paid for first year of college. So it was very helpful.
That's awesome. You all are very, very impressive. I've never had anything published in the New York Times, nor am I selling any sort of kind of books or anything on Amazon. So thank you all for being here. And so I guess let me I'm gonna pull up some slides to just use as a backdrop to our conversation and to just kind of kick things off and get things started. So again, we're talking about those 3 essential RevOps practices that you can kind of use to secure your status as a company MVP. We kind of got through the introductions already. I mentioned those 3 areas we're going to dive into: compensation, building the perfect tech stack, and then we've got a couple of specific examples too on how you can kind of tell a story with data that we'll kind of walk through. And today we're like I said in the introductions, Ryan joined us from the QuotaPath team. QuotaPath is an official kind of partner of RevOps Co-op, a great compensation and commissions tool. I got through our introductions already, so I'm not going to do those again. And let's just dive into kind of best practice number 1 and talk about being a compensation expert. And so as I think about compensation, whether you're joining a new revenue operations team, an early stage startup, whether you're coming in and you've got maybe comp plans kind of all over the board, I think it's your job to either maybe build them from scratch, maybe make sure the ones you've got in place are effective, and also just try to figure out where to prioritize kind of your energy. So Ryan, maybe I'll start with you on this, given the expertise that you have not only as a RevOps person, but a RevOps person at a compensation software kind of company. maybe when you joined QuotaPath, what were, or if when you joined any other kind of company in the past, what were some of the things that you did to evaluate current comp plans, identify where there might be gaps, were there things that you built from scratch? Like, what are those initial steps that you might be able to take to figure out where to focus your energy?
Yeah, so comp planning is one of the most interesting parts of being a RevOps leader because it is such a human and emotional component paired with such a mathematical component for me. And commissions and comp, and why I'm passionate about QuotaPath is it's one of the biggest places you can quickly lose trust among your team or retain trust if you do it correctly. So the first place I always start when I think about comp planning is one, understanding how your team is motivated from a sales perspective, what the comp plan that is in place today and what they like and don't like about it. When I think about comp planning, I always think about what are the things we like, what are the things we don't like, and take those little kind of notes and nuggets for when you think about plans for the future, so that if you do change comp plans in the future, you can throw your team some wins. Maybe they really want to be comped for a certain type of upsell or closing deals early or what have you. I think the second piece on the mathematical side is really just understanding. I love this concept of North Star metrics for your business. What are the things that you want to motivate your team to do that are very closely tied to performance of the business? So when I think about QuotaPath, we think a lot about having longer term contracts with our customers, for example. So I want my new business team to sign on longer term engagements so we can show more value to our customers over time, or I want them to sign on, larger customers or things like that. So how do I build those things into comp plans that are motivational for the business and motivational for the rep that are within the scope of control? And then the final one I always think about a lot, and really on that second piece is like, what are the things your board cares about and how do you align those to how you're compensating the team? Like if the narrative of the board is do these things for your business, then you want that to trickle down to an individual contributor on your team. And the final piece for me is really just simplicity. I think comp plans are innately far too complicated. If you wouldn't want their comp plan, you couldn't explain it to your grandma, you shouldn't give it to another person. And that's something that we are very passionate about here. So those are probably the biggest things I think about.
Yeah. And I know I've had in my last role where I was kind of leading BizOps and all RevOps for an early stage startup that eventually grew into kind of Series C and acquisition. I wound up in this place where I joined, and there was a sales team, and obviously we had offer letters that had variable versus kind of fixed kind of salary OTE, but there was really nothing that said, well, what's the commission rate? How are you going to compensate kind of these people? And so the first thing I kind of had to do was look at new business. That was obviously a North Star metric for us as well, driving new revenue. And then was like, okay, how do I build one from scratch? And I think, rather than, I don't know, my thought was, well, rather than recreate the wheel, let me go out and try to find some existing resources, right? Ask some excerpts. I was also kind of connected to some kind of consultants, right? I tried to, kind of crowdsource like, hey, what are best practices here, right? Rather than start from scratch, and kind of build things up from there. Kimmel, I think you've had a bunch of experience probably on both sides of building stuff from scratch and coming into a place where you had to maybe evaluate or tweak the current ones that you had. But what are some of those first steps that you take on the comp side?
I love that question. So totally agree with Ryan. It's as much about psychology and keeping people motivated as it is trying to hit an overall goal that you're given by the board. The very first thing that I do is I analyze the current structure and how people are attaining compensation. So what's the attainment rate? So if you have 20% of your reps making 100% of your number, that is such a red flag. So really understanding how they're attaining today. Ultimately, when you're designing a compensation plan, and the market's really soft right now, and I know this isn't true for a lot of people, but the ultimate goal should be at least 50%, if not 60% of your reps are at least 80% plus of attainment. So really analyzing where they are today before I even start dissecting the comp plan itself. Agree with Ryan as well. Like if I can't understand it, then it shouldn't be something that's rolled to the reps. You really want to foster the right behaviors, and to do so, it needs to be easy to navigate and easy to game the system, because you want them to feel like they're getting these nuggets and tricks that they can do to hit accelerators and other things that really help them win. So ultimately, you want them to feel like there's a path to success. And then, being the weird rounded person I am, when I'm seeing problems with attainment, I start digging into product insufficiencies and enablement, because part of it could be the compensation plan just isn't realistic. You need to start digging into why after you find that, though. So is it product deficiencies? Is it lack of enablement? Is it, we're a small startup and we can't afford the best talent, so they need a lot of training. Those are just the first few thoughts that pop into my head.
Yeah, Ryan, I saw you nodding your head a bunch. I'm curious because I think probably a lot of folks here too are maybe in a position where there's probably existing comp plans that folks have. So Kamala mentioned some things about evaluate historical attainment rates for your comp plans. Mentioned things like 50-60% of your reps at least achieving 70-80% of quota. What are some of those, maybe those benchmarks that you all might have, given obviously the expertise that you have at Quota Path, of what are some things you can look at, and what might some of those benchmarks be that could tell you a comp plan might need adjustment, whether it's something for your new business for your sales team, or for a comp plan for your customer success team, right? Or anything in between. What are some of those things that folks can look at that might be those red flags, like Campbell mentioned?
I think we've come a long way since I started building comp plans, 5 or 6 years ago, in terms of the resources available. So, QuotaPath has a lot of publicly facing resources on these things in terms of what are the big metrics you should be looking at as to whether your comp is successful or not. I agree with Cam 100%. Is a range of your sales team, 50-60% at 80% or higher attainment is one that we talk about a lot. I think others are really around the concept of your quota to OTE ratio based on the ARR of your business, right? So if you have, if you're less than $1 million business in ARR, but you have a 7-8x quota to OTE multiply ratio, you have big quotas for your team, and it's going to be pretty hard to attain. So it's how do you have headcount that supports your new business targets? And then pipeline coverage is the other one that we think a lot about with regards to quota and attainment. What is your multiplier of pipeline that's actually through the door, and what would close rates have to be for given the opportunities that are handed to your reps in order to achieve quota, right? So if you, if you're trying to ask for, 15-20x pipeline coverage, or 50 or 60% close rates, you're going to be in really tough shape, right? Industry standards on close rates are 25-35%, right? So if you have a comp plan that requires based on that's another one that I would take away. Look at the math of the ops that are created, what's the close rate have to be in order for your rep to be successful? That's close rates, quota to OT ratio, and pipeline coverage are 3 in particular that are we have a lot of resources on that show you you can drag and drop your ARR and your ASP and your number of ops, and is this a doable comp plan or not?
Yeah. And I think, in the past, I know I've had my direct experience, I think, we had a 5x multiple, I think, on quota versus OTE. And this was a SaaS company, whose average deal size was, started probably around 15K, and then over time, I think got closer to 20-25K. I can't remember what our pipeline coverage was, but yeah, you want to make sure that you've got, at least, if you're 35% win rate, that you've got 3-4x kind of pipeline coverage as well. And so those are great. I mean, those are some great data points. I know we're getting to the data storytelling later, but if, for example, you wind up in a spot where, like Kamala mentioned, where you come in and you've only got you've got majority of people not attaining quota, pipeline coverage, kind of win rates, and that OTE to quota ratio might be those good data points to start at, to see okay, well, why is this happening, right? Like you said, if you got to generate like if you barely have enough pipeline coming in the door to even cover the quota that you're supposed to hit, your win rate is going to have to be astronomical, and you're kind of just setting people up for failure. And
Well,
that's
right. And I think adding in churn and failure to onboard are really critical too. These are all, like, I agree with all of these, but those are kind of the two toppings, if you will, that really round that picture out and let you know, oh, maybe we
Yeah.
have a major product issue.
Yeah. And then the kind of the last question I have for you all on this topic is around, we talk about the North Star metrics here. And even as I think about the current economic climate, with things just changing, right? Call it over the last year. May not be one of those things where, it's kind of growth at all costs, but maybe now you're some of those important North Star metrics might be things like a shift from new business revenue to expansion revenue, right? Or, more of a focus on renewal rates, retention rates, things like that. How can you address those things, I guess, in comp plans? Like, Ryan, for you all, some of those North Star metrics change. What are things that you can do on the compensation side to make sure that, the teams align and that they're driving towards the things that are important for the business?
Yeah, if I think about my account manager team, we're pretty maniacally focused on gross revenue retention right now, right? That's a major initiative for us as a company. And so when I think about how do I build a comp plan around that, I have gross revenue retention targets. I build my AM team's comp plan around what percentage of the revenue up for renewal are they going to keep. Now, I want to think about other, I loved Cameron's point, like little nuggets of, or like, how do you game things in your control? So I think about, okay, what's the best way for me to keep revenue? It's my account manager team, one, signing renewals early, right? So what if I spiff on early renewals or renewals beforehand, because that allows me to pull forward this confirmed revenue, especially as day over day, the market gets worse and worse, right? So how can I incentivize somebody to get a renewal today versus a renewal in July or August? Even we have no idea what the market's going to look like then. And so early renewals is huge for my team. And you could spiff, play around with, 60 days plus early, you get a couple percentage points of the revenue up for renewal or something like that. The other one is contract conversions is big for us. So if a customer was on an annual contract historically, and our account management team says, look, we've developed a lot of mutual value, let's enter into a 2-year, 3-year relationship. That's another one that is beneficial for everyone involved, right? It makes that revenue not up for renewal for a while. You have more time to build that trust. And in markets, we were doing that a lot last year as well, knowing what the market was going to look like, because, or having a feeling of what the market would look like, so that less of our revenue is up for renewal this year, so that we can, buy more time to be successful for these customers. So those are some examples of like little pieces of a comp plan, especially from a renewal and revenue perspective, that have been helpful for us.
I would echo that I've seen a lot of the same behavior where we're incentivizing more for multi-year commitments. We're looking at early renewal incentives. And then another thing that we've decided to do as a very, very small company that's really dependent on, we're almost like half SaaS, half services. The services really help make the product sticky. So we noticed that the sales team wasn't being compensated on managed services. And in so many instances, they weren't pushing it because of that. We've decided to double compensate. So the success team and the sales team gets compensated. And it just made sense for our business in terms of a really smart retention and upsell play. The more value they see, the more they want to get. So looking at what might feel like a short-term sacrifice for a long-term benefit, like maybe double dipping on a few things, may be beneficial for your business. It really depends on how it's structured, where you're seeing a struggle, and where you need to balance things out.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, right, you want your sales team to be compensated well. That means they're doing well for the business, right? And I think the other thing that I'll just mention is also just make sure strike the balance. It's like the push-pull of simplicity and incentivizing the right behavior, right? Because at the end of the day, if you wind up having 13 different accelerators and decelerators and all this other stuff in your comp plan, is going to be so complex you can't abide by that first rule of, can you explain it to like your mom or your grandma? But
It's a pizza,
you
it's a
also-
pizza topping thing. You don't want more than 3
Yeah.
toppings on a pizza. That's how I always think about comp plans. 3
Yeah.
variables. You don't need more than
Yeah.
that. Don't be too complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. And then and the other thing I'll mention on that too is like I know in the past, right? Just make sure that, things like yeah, accelerators, decelerators, make sure you find the right balance like you would any sort of pizza toppings, like Ryan mentioned, and then also align that with the just make sure that things are aligned with the sales cycle, for example, right? That you're not paying things out I don't know, call it too quickly, or what I've seen more is like, too late, right? Just make sure that if you're paying things out on a monthly basis, that aligns with your sales cycle. If you're paying things out on a quarterly basis, that aligns with your sales cycle and the type of deals that you have as well. Because that also gives you an opportunity to, call it reset, right? If you want to, modify some of those accelerators, decelerators, things that are important, you can do that when, kind of some of those reset periods come up. And then Ryan, one of the things I know you mentioned, like having, again, some of these free resources on your website, is just talk a little bit about the compensation hub and how whether folks are evaluating their current setup for comp plans, or even if they're looking for something new. I guess give us a little on this resource, because this is a really good one. I know I've used it myself and produces some really good stuff.
Yeah, so Comp Hub's entirely free. It is a full comp plan modeler for all the different types of comp plans that may face your business, from different types of sales roles, SDRs, BDRs, account executives, all sorts of revenue generating members of your team. And really what you can do, what I really appreciate about it, is all the guardrails that Camo and I were talking about, like, are built into this. So if you have this much pipeline and what would your win rate need to be in order to have this comp plan be reasonable? Or if you have your average contract value is this, and this is how many opportunities you have, here's what a comp plan could look like. So don't, reinvent the wheel here. Like we have, hundreds of people we've talked about this very consistently. We do comp plan consults. Like, we know a lot about comp, and so we're trying to give you these free resources to be able to go around and play. So it's been saved me so much time building our comp plans this year, I'll be honest. And it's a great free resource to understand some of the drivers you can play around with, things like multi-year accelerators, milestone bonuses, that sort of stuff in your comp plans.
Yeah. So yeah, anyone who kind of needs a starting point, whether you want to revisit the stuff you currently have, or you're putting a new plan into place for anybody on your team, definitely check this out, because again, rather than recreate the wheel, leverage all the knowledge that the experts already have and that are out there for free. So all right, so RevOps MVPs, be the compensation expert, right? That's call it best practice number 1. It obviously wouldn't be a RevOps conversation if we didn't talk about technology or tools or systems. And so the other piece, and I mean, we probably could spend the whole hour on this if we really wanted to, is building the perfect tech stack. Not something that a lot of us have ever probably really had the opportunity to do, because most of the time you join a company, you inherit things that are there. But I want to talk, Ryan, first about, as you look at kind of the technology stack, what are the things that are there? Like, how do you bucket things? And then what are some of the, call it the best class, maybe providers or examples of tools that are in the space, so that, kind of for folks out there who are evaluating what they have, they can look at, again, some of those different buckets and kind of recommendations.
Yeah, I tend to think about this in problems you need to solve. I get this question a lot, and I tend to think about this in terms of problems you need to solve, and then what tools are going to solve that problem. So I think less about the logos. I mean, these are some of the tools that we use in our tech stack. I think less about the logos and more about the problems you're trying to solve. And to me, I think about it like, if I was just starting a business from scratch, like what were the things I would need to do? First, you need to understand who's going to buy your product. You need to talk to them. You need to be able to look at those conversations and track where they are. You need to track the data of your business overall, motivate your team, and then simplify your buying journey. That's the flow for me. And so I think about lead gen, sales engagement, marketing automation, these different things as a stepwise process. And so this is how I lay out my thinking. I think some of the ones that may be a bit of a surprise in terms of how important they are to me personally are based on kind of my data background, are data warehousing and migration and BI data visualization. Those to me being able to pull a bunch of data sources together, whether it's like sales engagement data or CRM data or call data into one central warehouse, or product usage data, and calculate different things around customer health and usage, and then pipe that back to where it needs to be. That tends to be super important to me. And then naturally, team motivation and commissions are a big thing for me from where I work. But this is kind of my line of thinking of how I scope this out. There are a lot of great providers in a lot of these spaces, but this is the kind of stack rank problem solution that I think about.
Yeah. And Camel, I'm curious before, because I've got some examples, some visuals of the way that you look at it too. What are your kind of thoughts on kind of the way Ryan laid this out?
I think it's I really like how this is laid out. Usually in the tiny startups, we are overwhelmed with a list of requests from people. So I see a lot of, and I feel safe saying this as a marketer and sales engineer, we have shiny object syndrome, and there are constantly things coming out. So if you have 10 minutes to give yourself a little chuckle, go on Slack and ask one of your marketers what they think of ChatGPT right now. So I think the bigger challenge is slowing people down and making them think about their strategy for you getting the most out of and utilizing these tools. Like I think of Chorus and Gong, those are fabulous tools. They're amazing. But if nobody has the time to go through the data and go through the insights, might want to double think it. So it's more about, what do we have the bandwidth to manage? Are we purchasing tools that are overlapping and have a lot of shared functionality? So for example, we discovered that Apollo is rolling out a ton of functionality that mirrors Outreach. And if you have both and you're paying for both the functionality, it's time to really look at what you're using. So for me, the focus is usually less about, do we have our bases covered? And as it is, how many bases are triple covered, and how can I cut some costs and help my business save some money by being realistic about what we have time to manage and do.
Yeah,
it's a great point, because like, I mean, if you think about, so two things. One, we've seen the rise of heavily point solution pieces of software in the past 5 years, but all of those point solutions have larger aspirations than just being that point solution. So like, you're going to start to see all of these pieces of software move horizontally, to Campbell's point. And like, I 100% agree with that. It's what's the overlap between the pieces. And then I love thinking about intake from software is, what is if I have a team request a piece of software that they're looking at, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and what's the solution that's in place today? And like, what metric do you think bringing in a new solution is going to have? I think, this is a portion of our tech stack. I think it's quite a large tech stack, candidly. Like, I think there's we could rethink and to Cameron's point, like, where are the overlaps? But that is the big barrier to entry for new software for our team is, how are you solving this problem today? And what would you do if I said no? Like, if you asked for this piece of software and I said no, like, what would your next step be? And then that kind of unlocks a lot of creative ways to do other things instead.
Yeah, don't let somebody shove a solution down your throat. Ask them why they want it and what they're trying to solve. Chances are you already have something in place. Another thing I would say is, don't be a snob about technology. I've fallen into that trap myself, where HubSpot used to be very subpar, and they have made so many strides in bridging a bunch of feature gaps. I used to be a stalwart Marketo fan, and now I'm like, HubSpot's good enough.
Yeah,
it does everything I need to do. Why be a snob about it?
Yeah, I actually I remember, I on HubSpot specifically, I remember at first when I started using HubSpot, I was like, all right, I'm gonna use HubSpot because, like, every early stage startup needs to use HubSpot, and I just can't wait for the day that we get big enough and we graduate to like Salesforce. And I'm like, you know what, HubSpot's actually pretty great. Like, you can do a lot of stuff with HubSpot. And I think you both brought up the point of like feature overlap and where you might be duplicating things. I know that's something that we took a look at too, whether it was our sales engagement platform, data enrichment providers, other things. Was they're like, what, we've got Outreach and we've got HubSpot, you can do sequences, you can do a bunch of other stuff. You know what? Might not be ideal, but it's 80% of what we need. And if that saves us a little money and also eliminates some complexity, right? Because the other aspect of like, tool bloat, right? Tech stack bloat is not only that you're obviously paying for all this different software, but like like imagine how many tabs you got to have up and like all this other stuff that you got to do as an end user to use all of these things. If you can eliminate some of that complexity, like there's tons of value there.
Going back to our point on comp plans too, every RevOps team is having this conversation right now. What tech is, what in our tech stack do we have overlaps with? What do we reassess? Every single RevOps team is having this conversation right now. And those are the people signing your renewal contracts for your business. So if you are not locking in, like this is the urgency of locking in these longer term relationships, because in a down market, the first thing that people are going to do is say, this solved a problem, but like maybe I could get by 80% of the way with Google Sheets, or I get by 80% of the way with like some combination of docs and slides or whatever problem they're solving, or I could just go on LinkedIn and manually research contacts, right? Like all these different solutions that are being automated. So you have to know that your buyer is definitively looking for a way to either use other tools to solve the problem you're solving, or just is going to be comfortable with the pain of a manual approach.
Yep. And Camel, I've got a couple of kind of slides and stuff in here on kind of the examples that you had shared, but I guess talk through the kind of the tech stack approach that we've got laid out here.
What I think it's interesting to point out is there are a lot of tools that do similar things and can achieve them almost as well as the next. There are only a couple CRMs that I will tell people to stay away from. The rest of them are good enough. So take all of this with a huge grain of salt. This is really just to illustrate, one, how much RevOps professionals are expected to know, and it is so much, but it's also expanding into the marketing ecosystem. I think Scott Brinker released his latest MarTech landscape. There are over 11,000 marketing tools in the market now, and marketers are the most susceptible to marketing, I have found. So you're likely looking at a lot of tool changes. I think as somebody who values analytics and usability, it is so important to really think through which of these systems you need to be analyzing and how to feed it all together. So I think it's really rare to have an organization that can get by with just what we can port into Salesforce. It's starting to become more and more necessary to have some kind of customer data platform or data warehouse or data lake, however you look at it, to be able to aid marketing in understanding what is and is not working. The sales team, to be honest, I've found a lot of issues with how they use Outreach, SalesLoft, those mass emailing, mass outreach tools. So it would behoove your business to take a look at your response rates, your bounce rates, your unsubscribe rates. And if you're not throttling how many emails are going out on a daily basis, they've likely burned through your domain. So I know tools like Apollo offer multiple domains that your sales team can rotate through. Take advantage of that. Just word of the wise, as somebody who's had a sales team burn through 2 domains, one of which being our main domain. And if your execs and your accounting team and your customer success team can't get emails out to the people who need them, you're in a lot of trouble. So I think there are some new challenges in the tech ecosystem that people need to be aware of that we didn't have to worry about when I started doing RevOps 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of a ramble, but hopefully it made sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the other thing I'll point out that obviously, Kamala brought up how many different tools and kind of systems and things, right? Folks in RevOps need to know also about shiny object syndrome, how we have a tendency to, maybe kind of adopt or buy a lot of these different point solutions. I think the other thing that I'll mention is the call it like that last mile problem, right? Like, you might be like, hey, obviously, like I need Gong or Chorus, or I need some like call recording software. But if all that's going to do is literally record conversations and you're never going to look at the data, you're not going to be able to use the data, adopt some process to maybe evaluate the things that you can learn and the insights that those tools can give you, then why on earth would you pay Gong $1,200 a year per person, right? Like Zoom can record your calls if all you want to do is record your calls. If you want to get insights from those, then you need a tool like Gong or Course. But keep in mind, like you still need to use those tools and those products. So don't forget about that last mile problem. And then the this is maybe a little different from others out there, given my last role was at an OKR software company. But whenever I would get those questions from people like, hey, I need to spend $25,000 on Sendoso because we got to get gifts out to our customers. I was like, okay, well, like what OKR is this going to help us solve for this quarter? Like what goal, metric, KPI?
Oh my God, don't get me started on the swag. I had a tongue-in-cheek video I put out there where every answer to any problem was send them a t-shirt. Is that going to help us meet our number? Probably. Now swag's great though. If you can't afford it, people do seem to really enjoy it, but my God, it comes up way more than it should.
But yeah, that's one of the, right, like I think Kamala, you said it, like ask why, like, okay, why? And then, Ryan, you mentioned, I like that too, of like, okay, well, what if the answer is no? Like, what if you can't use this? Like, how would you accomplish that same thing today to force people to, to actually think through like, okay, yeah, what would I do today if I just had to send gifts to all of our, our favorite customers, things like that. So
the other thing I think for what the facts are showing me, which I totally agree, is like your revenue generating teams are always going to consider the CRM the center of their ecosystem, regardless if you want them to or not, right? Like, so I think you have to you have to be thinking about the fact that the people, like all these tools, how are they going to fit into your CRM structure? And you may have the most amazing tool, but if it doesn't in some way kind of pull into the process of how you track things from a CRM perspective, it's going to be like adoption is going to be challenging, and there's going to be some like uphill battles there for sure. As much as you may want your data warehouse to be your source of truth and like pulling all that stuff together and telling the story, like you still do have to really be thinking about CRM embeddability, of course.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a good kind of segue into the next kind of topic here on data storytelling, right? Whether it's data within your CRM, your data warehouse, your data lake, wherever that might be. I think this comes up a lot for folks in RevOps, of not only needing to produce the data, right? Like make sure it gets into the spot where people can run reports, or like you need to be the one who's like, yes, this is actually this is the correct number, right? These are the real data points, the things we should be looking at, but also how you can tell a story with that. So I know, like Ryan, we've got an example from you kind of in here, and I don't know if you want to start with the example or if we want to first talk about like things to consider. Maybe that's where we can start from you, Kamala, is like, when you think about telling a story with your data, how do you go beyond just, I don't know, like answering the question? Like at the end of the day, I think that's what, whenever someone wants a data point of any kind, if it's pull this report or like, hey, what's our revenue growth, right? Like they're trying to answer a question, but there's purpose and reason and stuff behind that. So yeah, what are some things that you do to Ryan, to, I don't know, like where do you start, right? When you get maybe some of those requests in the door, or when you're just producing your normal weekly, monthly, quarterly, kind of reporting, what's the process that you run through?
I couldn't tell if are you asking me or Kamala?
You, Ryan, you
okay,
first.
all right, perfect. All right. I think that so one of the things that I think a lot about, and we'll go through this example. I like to give, we talked about like, takeaways or like action from these sorts of conversations. And so we'll kind of go through this example in a second. But one of the things I think a lot about is when you're trying to understand what's going on with your business, like understanding more of the variables that are actually driving change versus just the like kind of output variable that's being changed. So like saying that ARR, new business ARR was down 33% quarter over quarter, that's like the baseline understanding of your business. But really, in order to do anything about that, you're going to have to understand the driving metric and why. And so when you get data requests, a lot of times what I focus on is like, what is the problem you're trying to solve with this data? What are you going to go do with it? And then how is that going to drive actual action? It's a much different next step for your sales team if their qualification rate plummeted versus if your pipeline ASP collapsed versus if, one rep's or one region's win rate fell apart, right? Like those are three very different discrete things and are going to lead to discrete, actions for your team. So where I focus is really, what are you going to do with this data? What are the actions you're going to take? And like, what are you going to do to improve this so that next quarter you can be more successful on that metric overall?
Yeah, I like that. It basically, like kind of go, just start to, I don't know, peel the onion, go one step further, right? Not just like answer the question of, what was our, actual revenue versus target, but talk about, what are some of the drivers of that, right? And then following it up with, and here are some things that we can do to move the needle, right? Prevent that from happening again. Campbell, any thoughts or kind of feedback on that notion of call it data storytelling, like in terms of where folks can start before we get into some specific examples here?
I think people really need to pay attention to this and internalize it, because data does not change minds, stories do. And the higher I climb in corporate, the more I realize that how people feel is actually going to outweigh the data. So it's very important to tie what you're telling them to something they care about, understand what motivates them, understand where they're concerned. After I got into a boardroom and understood why my leaders were asking me all the questions when I was in RevOps, when I was building those decks, it clicked. I'm like, oh, this is what they were really trying to do. So the board is ultimately looking at, how did you perform? Why? How did you perform? What would you do differently? What are you going to do next time? That's really all they're looking for. And what's interesting is I've been talking to more and more VC investors. It used to be that we were 100% focused on growth at all costs. We weren't really paying attention to CAC or our efficiencies as much early on. We were just proving that our product had a market and the market needed it. Anymore though, VC firms are looking more and more like private equity firms, and that they're really deeply analyzing efficiency. And that really comes back to helping not only sales tell their story, because they're pretty good at telling their story. I'm going to be honest, they understand forecasting. They understand whether or not they hit their number. They understand how to tell those stories, but marketing, not as solid. If you look across departments, marketing is the least structured when it comes to the data points they are required to give the board. Every marketer I speak to has a different deck. So really understanding, like, this is on the horizon, and it's going to come and hammer marketing really hard, and we can help them get in front of it. And revenue operations is helping them understand how to prove ROI and communicate the shortcomings of their data and communicate all of the aspects of the business they touch. So I know I kind of went on a tangent rant there, but it's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that I loved about that, we're at our management team offsite this week, and one thing that I'm seeing a lot, we're talking about roadmap in the back half of the year and what we should do. And from a story perspective, I think Cam was exactly right. And one thing I think a lot about is, how do you actually take the data and then add anecdotes to it, like supporting anecdotes of actual customers or like conversations that customers are actually having that tie into those data points as well. So like an example is, we looked at churn with regards to our product roadmap, right? Who are the customers who churned? What do they do instead? And what are the features that we didn't have that would lead us to, like, say, retain those types of customers in the future? And so one of the things I can show, like, hey, these three customers, this amount of ARR churn for this reason, this amount of ARR churn for this reason. What actually has proven more compelling with our CEO and our management team is chorus video clips of the customers telling me, I wish you had this feature. And like, it's so funny to think about, but like, in theory, this much ARR, 500K in ARR, or whatever number is like for these reasons should be more compelling, but showing that and then showing a person looking into a camera and telling you like this, what they're thinking about has been so much more actionable, and it's been always actionable with our board as well.
Oh,
and so
oh,
that's-
yes, 100%. And then the other thing I want to just impart on RevOps is that if you have a down quarter or series of down quarters, it is the ripest time to convince people to change. So learning how to tell a story and resonate with them, like by using customer videos, any tools you can use to help reinforce your point to inspire the change you see needs to happen because you have that strategic and tactical view. Now is your time, and that's how you become a superstar.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, it is very much, understanding the things that drive the person on the other end, right? Like, who are you communicating this to? Is it your board, your CEO, your head of sales, your head of marketing, your head of customer success, right? You can take the same data points and craft a story that hits home for each of them. But it's going to be a different story, right? Even though it's coming from the same place. And so, Ryan, you've got kind of this example here that, maybe you can walk us through of, just like, okay, so close one ARR went down kind of quarter over quarter. What are some things you can do to, or like, what's the thought process in terms of pulling data for this and then trying to understand some of those drivers?
Yeah, so this is just an example. This is just all fake data, but like you get this, your close rate ARR for a new business team fell dramatically. Like, what do you do? And so the first thing we do, if we go to the next slide, for me really is like opening up this full view of the funnel. It's just fun to play around with some rand between fake data. But like, if I just look at the 86K, it doesn't really tell the story of what actually happened. What actually happened is we saw a reduction in total pipeline. We saw a lower ASP of that pipeline. We saw the average qualified op was much smaller than before. So we actually saw a slight reduction in pipeline size, but actually a much larger reduction in qualified ASP size. And we're winning a higher percentage of ops that are much smaller. Like that is the next layer of understanding for me. And so I do, you do things, super simple things like the quarterly average of this quarter over the average of the last 3 quarters will tell you some of this stuff. And this is the next level deeper to understand, okay, close when ARR fell, here are the metrics drivers, but this can't be where you stop. You have to then go to the next slide and like talk to the people about who are actually like seeing this. So the questions you would ask are, did you change your top of funnel pipeline strategy, or what types of ops do we demo but not qualify? Like, where are the places from a human perspective that are actually doing these breakages? And especially for something like ops that we demo but didn't qualify, go through all those ops and go through all the notes to understand like what's going on. And this leads you to be able to tell much more of a story to the board or to your VP of sales or your CRO or what have you. So I think on the next slide, I just talked about it. So it's basically like, okay, the punchline is close when ARR is down 31% quarter over quarter, but it's because we saw this slowdown in organic traffic. The bulk of demos came from events, and like this is a new type of op source for us. Our median op created was much smaller because we had a lot of really tiny ops, and then one blue whale op. Those ops were in very early stages because they were from events versus outbound, which was faster close. And then it's like, what are we doing next? To Cameron's point of like, what's the story? What are we doing? How do we change behavior? We have to rework our process for event-driven opportunities. We want to comp and spiff on outbound to get outbound back to be where we want to be and motivate the team to do more outbounding. And we have to like multi-thread train the team for these larger blue whale ops. And so you go from, this is a quick evolution, right? But you go from close when ARR down 31% quarter over quarter to what is it? What happened? Who do I talk to? How do I figure out what happened? What are we going to do next? And that gets you a seat at the like a management team conversation or a board level conversation so much more than, hey, this is 31%. I don't run the sales team, wipe my hands of it. It's like a whole different level of accountability and ownership for sure.
Yeah. It's kind of like, you could wind up in a spot where, you just provide this number, right? And then inevitably the people you provide it to come back and start asking you a bunch of questions for other data points that lead you to provide them with like, these these numbers, right? And then, they kind of come to a conclusion on why some of those numbers changed. And, they're the ones that, kind of end up crafting the story for themselves in a way that takes a lot longer. And it's probably harder to get to. Or you can, just kind of follow that thread, right? Think logically about like, okay, well, if this is what we're seeing in the data, like why did it happen, right? And then once you identify why it happened, moved on to, again, what can you or should you do about it, right? If anything, like you said, maybe it was a one-time blip because there were some really big, some really small deals, kind of in the pipe, or you had some of those one-time events or whatever it might be, right? Or maybe it was something that was brand new and you've developed you've identified that there needs to be a process change, some sort of process improvement. Like this is going to allow you to tell the story that will, like you said, Ryan, help you earn a seat at the table, but also just help you build trust with the leadership team, the board. Like these are the things that can really help elevate you and kind of the RevOps role.
There's such a proactivity to it, right? There's such an opportunity to say, hey, I'm actually noticing this metric is falling off a little bit. Like no one's expecting you as from a RevOps perspective to know exactly why, right? You're not selling the product, you're not running the demos, but at least if you can flag it and say, hey, these are some of the next questions I would ask, you build so much more trust with your, marketing and sales leaders in a way that you become much more of a collaborative resource, which I think is really, really awesome for growth in your career.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I don't assume that other people see what you do in the data. And then the one thing I would add to this is really get familiar with your audience and what they do and don't like. If I had shown the prior slide at one company I was at, the CEO would have walked up to the board and started going through each and every number. So I learned very quickly, I'm going to do it in chart format. I'm going to focus on 2 or 3 points. And that's all I'm giving them because I don't want them spiraling into a deep dive in an area I don't want them to go. So what was important for me was learning that I needed to report the same metrics consistently. I needed to just focus on the things that were necessary. And I'm going to learn their styles so that if they don't like words on the slide, fine, I can put it in the notes and speak to it. But if you reduce any friction possible, it's not just catering to them, it's really making the meeting more efficient and keeping them focused where they need to be.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 100%. And, I guess, Kim or Ryan walked through the example of like moving from, hey, ARR is down to how you can kind of craft a story here. Do you have any examples of obviously like your experience being on the RevOps side, having to report to the board, all that stuff, like any specific examples that come to mind that you could share of like, oh, it started with this, right? We were kind of looking at this and this is how we ended up, this is what we ended up learning. And these are the things we ended up doing. This is how I ended up crafting a story to the executive team, to the board. Any specific examples come to mind, Kamala?
Oh, yeah, a few. So when I was in marketing, whenever I presented to the board, I gave them the same 4 charts every single time, but the story that went with it was different because what we learned, what we were going to do next, and what we were going to do to change things for the better always changed. So I started with bookings, then pipeline, because I recognized whether it's fair or not, and I control it or not, I am judged on whether or not we're attaining quota as a marketer. So I always start bookings, pipeline, lead gen, and then overall engagement. And those are the only things I would show. I think it's a mistake to go into all the different initiatives and just focus on website traffic and the other things. They don't matter as much to the board. I learned really quickly I could keep and hold their attention if they knew that I know what the company is marching towards and what they care about the most. What gets really tough is if you've had a down quarter or several down quarters is trying to communicate a problem you're seeing without it looking like you're pointing a finger elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I learned really quickly, I need to focus on what I can control and what I can change. And even if I think there's a problem with sales follow-up, I'm probably going to keep that internal with my sales manager and the CEO and try to work through that. instead of elevating it first to the board. I mean, they're going to see it in the numbers anyway. So just focus on what you can impact and change. And I will also say, as a RevOps professional, I value so much more somebody who says, here's not only the deck, but here's what I noticed. Here are the next questions I think we should ask. Because if you come to me with that, I'm like, yes, let's go ask those now so that I have better answers when I go to the board and we can start the train moving. Because if I can react to something mid-quarter, even better than waiting until the board deck, and we can start to make an impact early, that's going to make me as a leader look better. And that's going to make you look better because I'm going to be singing your praises.
Yeah. Yeah. And
don't wait until the end of the quarter to look at the numbers, please. God, don't do
that. Yeah. No, that makes that makes a lot of sense on kind of anything you can do to be proactive. And then too, it got me thinking on, hey, when you tell that story, right, like one of those ways that you can build trust, like Kamala said, is you don't want to necessarily come across as just like pointing the finger at kind of like certain people or certain teams for things that aren't working. One of the things you can do to call it address that and to point out the things that we need to do is like in this what we're doing section that Ryan laid out is like, hey, not only talk about the things that we're doing to fix the problems, but talk about the things that we did that worked that we should continue to do, right? So, I'm not sure on the screen what that might be, but like if our close won rate went up, or if it's still above a benchmark, or like those things that are going well, right? If it's not pipeline production, maybe it's conversion rate from stage to stage, whatever it might be. Point out those things about like, hey, what we're doing, like here's some things we're doing to fix problems, but here's some things we're doing really, really well, and we're going to continue to do those things, because that kind of proves that you've got your eye on, again, the whole, called the whole spectrum. And if you bring up like 3 things that people need to work on, that can come across as, again, people get defensive. It's human nature. If you bring up 3 things that people need to work on, in addition to the things that those teams are also doing well that they should continue to do, going to be, much better received. So
yeah, everyone has an ego. We had a great question on whether or not we can have another webinar that talks specifically to how to deliver to the board. Do we want to do a quick plug to a master class that we're going to be putting on, Matt?
Yeah, so I see that now. And so we are going to be doing we've got education course catalog out there at RevOps Co-op. One of the courses that we're going to be doing that actually will be led by Kamala will be a master class on kind of board reporting and executive reporting, leadership reporting. It'll go into some of this data storytelling. There'll be some lectures, some office hours with Kamala, a bunch of good stuff. It'll be a relatively quick course. I think we're planning it for like 5-6 weeks, something like that. So yes, definitely check that out. And along with that, I'm sure we will probably do another event on the topic as well. But yeah, if you're in the community, you'll get updates on all of this stuff. So another plug for the community as well to join. But with that, we are officially at the top of the hour. So Ryan, Kamala, thank you all very much for kind of sharing your examples, dropping some knowledge on some people. Very good stuff. To everyone who attended, listened in, thank you very much as well. As we mentioned, the session was recorded. We are going to edit the video. We'll do a write-up with it as well. It'll get posted on our website probably the next week and a half. So keep an eye out for that. But until then, I'll let you all run. Again, Kamala, Ryan, thank you all very much. And everyone else, we'll see you all later. Take care.
Thanks for having me. Great nerding out with you, Ryan.
You too. See you, girl.
See you all.